if you continue at 450,000,
Yeah,
that was a one-shot deal.
That was a one shot. I don't see another us sponsoring it about
For some time.
Good morning.
if we are going to spend, it would likely be under 50,000.
Good morning.
I have a feeling we're going to see
A lot of new numbers.
Hi, it's Sean Eskovitz joining.
That's what I think.
We all know a loophole when we see it.
Huh?
We all know a loophole when we see it.
Sean, this is Gavin Wasserman. They said they're waiting for some people to show up.
Okay, hi, Gavin.
Hi.
For you. You were coming.
For you? I came for the lunch, but I thought I was coming in to do this too. We have an office out there.
In this building?
Yeah.
Well, you should be one where they're all about. They have to, you know, call after the fact.
They were.
She's great. She's great. That's when you say that, I think you're talking about.
I know she's straight too.
They do much. Yeah, no, she's good. She's a. Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
She actually. Yeah, man.
That's how I first You know, it's like every third semester, but I don't know what's going on.
Wow, yeah.
Good.
Got your big coffee today? You're ready to go for the
I know.
local thing.
In case it goes on forever.
Yeah. It doesn't look like it's that.
Yeah.
You guys don't have any big regs you guys are discussing.
Yeah.
That's next meeting.
Yeah, I was like, you guys went light on the first meeting.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Just figured that we did.
Yeah.
How are you liking your new job?
I love it.
Are you doing legislation there too?
Yeah. Not so much lobbying, a lot of tracking, a lot of organizing, not so much asking for votes. Yep. Hey, Garrett.
You look relaxed.
Much more.
I'm subbing for Diane.
Keep up the good work, Garrett.
I know.
She's all
Huh?
It seemed like, from my perspective, yeah.
Okay, we'll get started with the June 19th, 2014 meeting. Jacob, if you could please call the roll.
Here. Commissioner Eskovitz,
Present.
Commissioner Wasserman,
Here.
Commissioner Wynn,
Here.
Chair Remke.
Here. Okay, good morning. As many of you or some of you may know, this is my first meeting, so please bear with me as we may stumble through some of this. But I would like to just have a couple comments. I'm honored to have been selected by the governor to serve in this capacity, and I am looking forward to continuing to promote the goals of the commission. I also look forward to working with my fellow commissioners and the excellent staff here at the commission. I've only been here a couple weeks, but I could tell you that we have a highly qualified and dedicated staff. So, thank you. Before we get started with the items on the agenda, is there any public comment on items not listed? Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Would you mind stating your name?
Of course, Chair Remke, Philip Ong on behalf of California Forward. Under a new capacity, I used to testify here all the time under a different banner. On behalf of California Forward, our Leadership Council, and our Action Fund Board, we just wanted to extend a welcome to the new chair, and glad to see her filling the spot that was unfilled for some months. I was asked to come here to offer some testimony about the work that we've done at California Forward that relates closely to the interest of the FPPC. In 2013, Senator Yee had introduced a bill, Senate Bill 3, that made it all the way to the governor's desk and was then vetoed, and the governor had called for a study to be done on the Cal Access system, which he quoted, or at least had described as outdated and needed an upgrade. So in response to SB3's veto, California Forward embarked on research requested by the governor. Of course, he didn't request us to do it. He requested the government, the other agencies, Government Operations Agency. It's a new agency, so I'm just still trying to learn it. Government Operations Agency, the FPPC, and the Secretary of State to conduct a study. And so we went ahead and provided a private one. And the result of the report was released in March during Sunshine Week. And we shared that with the staff. We've also provided copies to the commissioners here today. And it was titled Rebooting Campaign Finance Reform. The report was also shared with the governor's office, the legislators, and Secretary of State's office, and of course Government Operations Agency. Additional copies can be made available to the commission and its staff, and it's also available online at cafwd.org. And following on the positive response that we received to our report, in May, California Forward also led a coalition of groups to support a potential financing plan for the upgrade of Cal Access, assuming that the Secretary of State or the next one continues with a traditional procurement model. The coalition drafted a letter, which is provided to you today as well. The letter includes a focus also on the FPPC's Form 700 system, which is on your agenda today, and we look forward to an update from Ms. Peth. And it urges the governor and the legislature to place increased focus, funding, and staff on the completion of your Form 700 project. And as our letter states, a singular, quote, a singular opportunity exists to coordinate these projects, the Cal Access system and the Form 700, to create efficiency and improve overall transparency in campaign finance and economic interest disclosure of elected officials and appointed officials. The state can pursue shared infrastructure or parallel development paths to leverage both projects and drive a cost-effective and streamlined system that bolsters transparency and efficiency, unquote. So going forward, please consider California Forward and myself and our board as a partner to improve California's disclosure systems and disclosure laws. My colleagues and I are eager to engage further on your future agenda, Madam Chair, and of course the agenda of the Commission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and we'll move to the proposed consent calendar, which, as listed on the agenda, items 2 through 39. I'm going to go ahead and remove item 2 from the consent calendar at the minutes, and since I was not here at that meeting, I will not be voting on the minutes. I'm also going to remove item 39 because that is actually an informational item and does not require a vote. Okay, so right now we will just be focusing on items 3 through 38.
I would move approval of the consent calendar.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I actually would like to remove some items for discussion.
Sorry. And I'm sorry, who's speaking?
This is Gavin Wasserman.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Wasserman, I couldn't tell. Thank you. Now, are you removing items or do you wish to comment on items, just so we're clear?
I wish, well...
Because we can have an opportunity to comment on items before we go ahead and make a motion.
Well, let me see. Yeah, I think it's really just comment and questions of staff.
Okay, then why don't we hold on the motion and we will go ahead with the questions. Commissioner Wasserman?
Thank you. Just so you can follow along, it's 3, 4, 6, 16, and 27.
3, 4, 16, and 27?
3, 4, 6,
oh.
16, and 27.
Oh, okay.
May I proceed?
Please.
All right. Question for staff. Number 3, regarding the respondent wisdom. How was this investigation initiated? Did it come from an audit from FTB, newspaper, complaint, sworn, or anonymous?
Thank you, Commissioner Wasserman. This is Gary Winnick, Chief of Enforcement. That was actually a proactive investigation. Part of the campaign we initiated several years ago to review through certain methodologies, campaign statements in competitive elections to try and identify potential instances of money laundering. This is one of the ones where we found money laundering and prosecuted it effectively.
Thank you. Comment is that this, at least as the stipulation sets forth, this goes to one of the issues that I had raised when I first got on the commission about education. Assuming that as the facts as they are presented state that this is a willing but ignorant of the law violation, the attempt to educate in the communities to prevent these things, as opposed to a willing and knowing, or simply a coercive situation where an employer is forcing employees to do something. Since these were the officers of the entity, I surmise that that's not a coercive situation. Clarification also, Wisdom is paying the fine, not the officers. Is that correct?
That's correct. The named respondent is paying the fine.
And the laundered funds are going to be disgorged.
That is required under the Act, and we will be seeking that once the Commission, well, if the Commission adopts this particular item.
And the last question I have on this item is really more of a general question. In situations like this, in particular with the 501c3 operating in California, are these matters then referred to the IRS and the AG's charitable trusts and the FTB, or do we sort of function? Is there a cross-reporting function? Obviously, I don't know if they report to us. FTB does, of course. They let us know about things from their audits, but is this something that gets referred to IRS, AG Charitable Trust, and FTB?
Currently, we do not refer to the IRS. We can at the direction of the Commission if that's your direction.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Wasserman, can you just expand on your thoughts on referring this to the IRS?
Well, first of all, let me look back. This is a contribution to a candidate?
Correct.
Right, which a 501c3 is prohibited from doing under federal law and IRS regulations. It is a big no-no. And the Attorney General Charitable Trust Division also has a separate sort of jurisdiction over nonprofits functioning in California. And certainly the FTB with respect to whether or not one maintains your nonprofit status in California. So, I guess this goes to the question of how far do we go? Do we simply handle what's in front of us? In some cases where we've had conflict of interest, we've had discussions about, has this been referred to criminal proceedings, et cetera, and yes, something else is going on. I was curious about in this type of context.
Just as a refresher, Commissioner Wasserman, for the criminal context, when we do have a certain category of cases that are the more serious type, including money laundering, we do automatically refer. We haven't had, I would say, a broad number of 501c3 contribution cases, so it's never really come up, quite frankly, to where we institute a policy. But if the commission, 3 members of the commission or more desire us to refer that category, we can.
Okay. I would be in favor of that sort of policy. I mean, we're talking about perhaps not the same sort of issue or level, but
Commissioner Wasserman, this is Zach Morzini, the General Counsel. If the Commission is interested in exploring that more, we would have to agendize that matter to vote on a policy direction like that. So, just one point of clarification there.
All right, and then I would ask that come back then. I can move on to number 4, if that's fine.
And just so I'm clear, Commissioner, you're asking that the concept and policy consideration of referring things be presented at a future meeting, not this particular item being...
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then we'll move on to item 4, I believe was the next one.
Yes, thank you. So I understand the council member disclosed the true source of funds. So this is a money laundering case that is willing and a known attempt, although they're mistaken about existing contribution limits. They were trying to avoid a contribution limit that didn't exist. And again, this is going to be a mandatory disgorgement to the general fund. And that's my understanding, and that is correct. Mr. Winnick?
That is correct.
Oh, that's all on number 4.
Okay. And then you had number 6, right?
Number 6. I just wanted to point out for my fellow commissioners that, and just for my future thought, is the nexus and any reasonable foreseeable financial effect aspect is challenging. Obviously, on the facts of this case, we are where we are in terms of the stipulation, but it's interesting to take other facts and other scenarios in everyday life around municipalities, etc., and sort of plug those in and see how that all comes out. But I just wanted to highlight that and move on.
Sure, I think you're right. If it were a disputed issue, it's going to be a more interesting analysis. But we do have the stipulation in this case.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm able to move on to 16 unless there's.
Okay.
16 with respect to the amount of the penalty, I am fine with following the Maldonado prior case and imposition of a fine in that Maldonado case here, but I am personally going to be thinking about in future cases whether or not this sort of fact pattern might be worthy of higher penalties. That's just a note. And I'm ready to move on to 27.
Okay.
27, City of Rockland. Can I get just a clarification about criteria 2? In this case, we have photographs, names, and titles of city officials going out in a mass mailing by the city. Would a mailer such as a calendar of events that went with simply the names of the officials and their titles likewise run afoul of this part of the Political Reform Act and the regs.
Commissioner, again, Gary Winnick, in the exhibit itself, it lays out the section which I think is fairly explicit about the criteria that need to be met. So it's section 89001. Obviously, it needs to be 200 or more pieces. And then there's, the requirement that feature an elected officer. It lists some of the specific things that constitute featuring. There's a number of advice letters that have addressed this issue as well. And then there's sort of the cost issue. So those are the criteria. I think, like all cases, it gets rather fact-specific. But this actually probably has more guidelines than many other pieces of the Act in terms of specificity.
Sure. I was just looking at the summary of the law in the Exhibit 1 or Exhibit I, depending on how you read that. Summary of the law, mass mailing, Item 2, which states, features an elected officer affiliated with the agency which produces or sends the mailing. An item features an elected officer when the item includes, among other things, the elected officer's photograph or signature. Regulation site. A mailing containing the name, office, photograph, or any other reference to an elected officer who consults or acts in concert with the agency to prepare or send the mailing also fulfills the second criteria. And it was that last sentence that relates to my question. I know there are a number of opinions. I was just asking specifically about that fact pattern.
Can you just repeat your question? I'm sorry. I'm not sure what the question is there.
Sure. The question is whether, under that second criteria, that last sentence, a mailing over 200 that otherwise fulfills criteria 1 and criteria 3 would satisfy criteria 2 if it, for example, were a magazine of city events with the names and titles of each of the city council members.
It again gets really factually specific. There's exceptions for letterhead and other types of things. So I'm not trying to avoid your question. I'm just hesitant to give an answer without seeing the item in question. It has a lot of specificity to it in the advice letters as well, including a couple of exceptions, like I mentioned, for letterhead. So
Sure.
I would just be hesitant to commit.
Something like Inside Rockland, but without the photographs. And just
It sounds like our chief enforcement officer does not want to start guessing at what may be a violation without all the facts in front of him.
Maybe just a bit another way. It could be a violation, and it meets some of the criteria, but I think we'd have to really know all the facts and apply it to give you a definitive answer on something like that.
Anything else on that one, Commissioner Wasserman?
I will bring this up later and attempt to be more clear, because I thought I was clear because I was simply saying Inside Rockland without photographs, but I will revisit this later on a different issue. That's it for 27. That will be it for the consent calendar for me. Thank you.
Okay, did any of the other commissioners have questions or comments on the items on consent? Was there any public comment on any of the items on consent? Okay, seeing none, and I believe we already had a motion. I'll second.
Commissioner Kasher? Yes. Commissioner Eskovitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Wasserman?
Yes.
Commissioner Wynn?
Yes.
Chair Remke?
Yes. So those were items 3 through 38, and then we have the minutes, which I pulled off.
So I would move approval of the minutes from the
I'll second that.
17th meeting.
Gavin Wasserman?
Oh, you second? Okay.
Commissioner Kasher?
Yes.
Commissioner Eskovitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Wasserman?
Yes.
Commissioner Wynn?
Yes.
Chair Remke? Oh, sorry.
All right. So that passes as well. So then we're going to actually jump to items 40 and 41. Mr. Winnick?
Madam Chair, did you want to do item 39?
I was going to have you do 39. It's informational with the other two informational items.
Sure, absolutely. So items 40 and 41, Gary Winnick, Chief of Enforcement again. These are cases we are requesting assignment out to administrative law judge for hearing. If you'll recall, the regulations in the Act allow the Commission to hear things directly if you are so inclined. If two or more of you wish to do that, generally the practice of the Commission has been to allow an ALJ to have the hearing first and then provide you recommendations on the fact and law and penalty for you then to hear again. That's our recommendation here.
Just as a procedural question,
Sure.
once it goes out to the ALJ, what is roughly our timeline before it will be brought back to us?
I'm going to say around a year, but that varies. It goes to the Office of Administrative Hearings, which has 3 offices in Sacramento. Well, I think actually more than 3 offices. Some of them are quite busy, and some of them have a shorter calendar. So we actually set some of these before we come here just to get on calendar and try and accelerate our time frame, if you will. Something we could obviously pull if you want to hear it yourselves. One is set for October, and one is set for around the January time frame currently.
Okay, good. Any questions?
Madam Chair, this is Gavin Wasserman.
Yes,
Just
sir.
a procedural question. Mr. Winnick, we actually don't have to take action on this. If we choose not to indicate a desire to participate, then it will, by default, go to the ALJ. Is that correct?
Correct. It's sort of a negative checkoff item. It's really just offering you the opportunity
To
if
make a motion.
you have a case that you want to hear directly to do that. If not, there really is no action required.
Thank you, Mr. Winnick. I will not be making any such motion.
And that was on both items 40 and 41?
Yes, I did lump them together, so
Okay, so there,
I can repeat myself.
what? Okay, so no commissioner is going to be.
Well, I would make a motion. I would move that we refer both of these cases to an ALJ.
But we don't really need. We don't
yeah, I'll
need
speak
to
for Ms.
make the
Marzano,
motion.
yeah.
We just need to make a motion if you want to keep it with us.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I was
It's an
confused as well.
odd duck.
Okay, so that's both 40 and 41. And we will now move to the informational items, and we're going to jump back to 39 and 42 with you, sir.
Thank you. This is another item that does not require a vote.
39, right? We're on
Correct.
39.
This is for item 39. It's a disgorgement item. It's just a little bit unique in the sense that the penalty was imposed by our partners at the San Diego Ethics Commission rather than by ourselves. But the disgorgement statute does talk about anyone being found having a violation of the money laundering statute being required to disgorge. So in conversation with San Diego Ethics, we both agreed that the best way to facilitate the transition to general fund was to sort of run it through our process. So we're doing that in partnership with them, but that's why it's a little bit unusual.
Any questions?
So I was happy to see this partnership, and I think the result is a good one. Is this typical for you to kind of look for local partners on a case such as this?
We work really closely with the ethics commissions, with San Diego, with Los Angeles, increasingly so with San Francisco as well. So you've seen a few joint settlements in our time here, and sometimes we do that. We do conduct joint investigations quite frequently. But we also have a lot of contact. One of my personal goals coming in here was to try and increase the consistency of the interpretation and enforcement of the Act, and I've found some very willing partners with our Ethics Commission. So we'll exchange reviews and information about cases and approaches, so we're trying to interpret consistently.
Well, thank you, Mr. Winnick, and I'd like to encourage you to do more of it. I think this is a really good settlement.
Madam Chair, this is Gavin Wasserman. May I comment?
Yes, please.
I would also like to commend Mr. Winnick. As part of my personal outreach efforts, I have visited the LA City Ethics Commission offices on a number of occasions and reached out to San Diego and San Francisco, and each one of them provides feedback which is identical to what Mr. Winnick has stated, that we are excellent partners, that there's a good line of communication, and I think that's really, really important and really a good thing. So, aside from as opposed to my usual questioning, I just wanted to state, well done.
Thank you.
Anything else on that item? Okay, so then we'll move on to item 42.
Fortunately for all of you, the last enforcement item.
That is the last from you.
I did want to take a minute now that the primary came by just to update you on the pre-election proactive efforts we undertook, just so you had some visibility of them. I highlighted 3 of the things that we highlighted that we focused on in the memo. I won't rehash the whole thing, but just give you a couple of quick highlights. We tried to target non-filers. You know, a lot of the discussion we have here is that it's nice to give our $200 fine after the election, but it's way more important to have people file before the election. We don't really have the staff to target every jurisdiction in the state, so we narrowed the universe to cities of 100,000 or more that do not have ethics commissions that already engage in this issue. So we managed to achieve 100% compliance in that target set, which I think was pretty good. There was only one person we had to draft litigation and prepare for a court date, but they saw the error of their ways and filed before we needed to do that. So all in all, I think that was fairly successful. I think it's also a good partnership with our city clerks who have an extra tool they can say to people that are not cooperative with them to say, look, the FPPC is also engaged in this area as well. So we view that as a success. We also proactively review all of the ballot measure advertisements, both on the state and local level, to make sure that the disclosure that's required is being produced. It's an easy visual to look at it, although I think some of our interns go blind looking at campaign ads eventually, and it's sort of like a medieval torture. We did find a few that did not meet the requirements, including some that were not disclosing the sources of contributions. All were cooperative, and all we managed to correct those before the election, so we were pleased with that. It wasn't as high a volume, given that the November ballot now has more of the direct initiatives on the state side due to changes in state law, so we should see more of that in November.
Yes. Yes,
did you want to express now?
Yes.
Yeah, this is interesting to me. I'm happy to hear that you're doing this. Gary, if someone has just made a good faith mistake, and you know have an intern, a blind intern now, who finds that, is that just kind of you call them up and say you need to correct that, and then there's no fine imposed, or?
I can't say there's never been a fine. Two times before we've had an issue where a major campaign ran without disclosure, and we thought there was an element of intent in it, like diffusing the background so you can't read it, and things we felt were intentional. We brought to the commission post-election a fine. The fine amounts tend to be reduced because the pre-election correction we consider a mitigating factor. For some of these, though, we do not take enforcement action. We're really, if people call up and they say, you're right, and then they fix it immediately, and there's no harm, no foul.
Great. Well, I think that's a nice service that you're offering, and I appreciate it.
I'm not sure the campaign's viewed as service, but it's a polite way to put it.
It's a service to the people.
I'm just
It's better than getting into
No,
penalty
just kidding.
territory and then, being
Sure.
hauled up and enforcement action open and a fine levied. I mean,
Sure.
here's an opportunity to correct. That's actually a service. So
Yeah, and again, I was just teasing.
Yeah.
But
don't tease me.
And I see that you say you're going to continue the proactive efforts for the November election. Is it going to be about the same scope, or do you imagine?
There are going to be significantly larger ballot measures, I would imagine, at least on the state side in November. On the local, it's hard to predict, but we are going to continue to do it. The nice thing now, honestly, this one's gotten easier and easier because a lot of the ads are on the web that run on TV, so we don't even need to sort of set our DVRs and find the ads. They're actually really easy to locate now, so it's gotten to be an efficient process too. The last one I just wanted to highlight, this was our first go around with our San Bernardino contract. And if you recall, one of the provisions of that contract was that we were going.
Jump in. I just want to know the year that was started. The contract was entered into.
It was entered into last year, so this is really our
the
first
full year, right?
Cycle.
Okay.
So this is our first primary in San Bernardino. So part of that contract, if you recall, was that we were going to provide pre-election audits for all campaigns, which is really unique in the history of the commission and the act, and kind of an interesting social experiment in some ways. I have to say, I think that wound up being a very productive process as well. There were certainly some major things, including literally a bag of cash being transmitted that, although reported as a bag of cash, still was not a contribution that could be accepted, and we were able to intervene in some of those things beforehand. We obviously got 100% compliance with disclosure and corrected a lot of errors, both great and small, and kind of a rolling process. So I thought it was a successful process. I think we'll see how that goes. There were 18 campaign committees we did during those pre-election periods. So I think their campaign committees had an adjustment period. They weren't used to us sort of being involved at that stage. But again, I think we tried to use it for the most part as an educational process, not as a punitive tool. So I think it was successful, and we'll see how it goes rolling into November.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the Commissioner? Thank you. And then we are on item 43, the update on Form 700.
Good morning, Chair Remke and Commissioners. Erin Path, Executive Director. I just thought this was a good time, obviously, with a new chair coming on board and just the status of the current project to give the Commission an update on where we are in implementing Assembly Bill 409, which the Governor signed last year in the fall, to give the Commission the authority to develop an electronic filing system for the Form 700s, also known as SEI's Statements of Economic Interest. So I think there's just universal consensus that the current process for filing and maintaining Form 700s is outdated. At the Commission, all of our processes are manual currently, although we are posting some Form 700s on our website. Those are all scanned and redacted manually. And so we have made, the Commission in the past several years has made significant steps in trying to increase the availability of that kind of information to the public, but it takes, it's burdensome for both filers and staff here. And then we have sort of an added complexity that we estimate about 500,000 Form 700s are filed statewide in California, although some people think the number is higher than that. But we have about 25,000 forms that are filed directly with the Commission here, and that's under a particular code section that requires certain types of officials to file here. The rest of the officials statewide file directly with either their local or county agency, whoever they're working, or if they're at a state agency, they're filing directly at the state agency they work at. So as you can see, that's somewhat decentralized system. It's confusing for filers because they don't exactly understand where they should be sending their forms. We have a lot of people who send their forms here because they think we are the filing officer, we're not. And it also is difficult for the public to understand where a form might be located, who they ask for the form, or who they ask for the form. And so I think generally everyone has been positive about trying to decrease staff workload at the same time of increasing transparency. So Assembly Bill 409, as I said, passed last fall. However, in the last several years, there's been a few other things going on. In 2008, the legislature authorized a pilot project for Form 700 e-filing for a handful of local jurisdictions, and all of the jurisdictions that participated reported increased efficiency, increased compliance rates, and also a reduction in costs. And then in 2012, the legislature authorized all state and local agencies to basically get their own e-filing systems. Those systems are certified by the Commission, so both for IT reasons, for security and those kinds of things, and then also our Technical Assistance Division reviews them for to make sure that it actually accurately collects all the information that's required on the Form 700 and those kinds of things. In less than a year and a half, 68 agencies, including 21 of the 58 counties, have already procured their own electronic filing systems, and people are, from what I can tell, raving about that. SCIF, where the State Compensation Insurance Fund, is one of the state agencies, and they had, I think, 100% compliance on the filing deadline, because obviously it's easier for people to, it seems just less difficult. And the electronic filing systems are able to record, to keep your information from last year, so if you don't have anything that's different, you just go in there, you log in, you can print it out or e-file it, and you're done. So we're in the process of trying to look at what we can do as the commission to develop our own electronic filing system. The legislation that passed gave us parameters in terms of, again, types of the security that's necessary to be in the system. It mandates that we have public input into creating our own system. And then it also would allow us a couple other options sort of down the road potentially. One is to, once we were to obtain an electronic filing system, we could publish the data on our website, subject to some specific types of redaction for security and privacy reasons. And then also it contemplates that down the road, the commission could become the filing officer for some of these local or state agencies. That is also subject to the approval of the local agency. So we would have to develop a system by which we, either people approach us and want us to become the filing officer, or we approach them and then figure out how that would work. But those are sort of incremental things potentially down the road. So commission staff, since the legislation passed, actually before the legislation even passed, but has been exploring this for a long time. We're currently working really closely with the Government Operations Agency and the Department of Technology to go through all the required approvals under, since it will be obviously a state system, it has to go through all the control agencies. And so there's several different steps that we have to go through with the Department of Technology. We've already gone through one of them. We're in the middle of the second step, which is to submit a feasibility study report, which looks at the business case for why an agency needs this type of a technology, and then explores potential solutions for the problem you're trying to solve. We anticipate being able to submit our feasibility study report this cycle, so hopefully by the end of July. And once we get that approved by Department of Technology, we can go to Department of Finance to try to get to put in a budget change proposal to get funding for the system, hopefully for the 15-16 budget year. So that's where we're at right now. And then I just wanted to mention, as probably is incredibly well known, the Secretary of State's office is working on replacing the CalAccess campaign filing system that they have over there. And we have been working, obviously, with them on that system and in terms of how that system interacts with the Commission's needs and the Commission's enforcement responsibilities. And then, but we are also coordinating to see, because of these two systems are potentially being developed around the same time, if there's opportunity for at least the architecture and the coding and such to be done in such a way that down the road, not that we would necessarily have one system, but that you could have maybe a public portal or something where you could access both campaign data and financial economic interest data of officials at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is a unique opportunity, just again because we're kind of on the same path, different roads, but at the same time. And so I just wanted to commend our commission staff on this. This is the type of project that is really important, I think, but it takes a lot of staff resources, and especially in our technical assistance division and our administrative division, which has our IT department, staff's already spent an incredible amount of resources, and we will continue to do so as we try to push for this program.
Thank you. Yes.
Thanks very much, Erin. I'm really pleased at how much progress you've made. So a couple of times in the report, you talked about a public meeting. Now, I'm sure there's been a lot of reaching out to agencies that will be using this, but could you just explain what that public meeting is going to look like or has looked like? I couldn't tell if it's already happened.
We haven't had any official interested persons meetings on this yet. The legislation mandates, I think, in two different places I think one place is to talk about the security and just the system itself, and then another place is, I think, we're mandated to have an IP meeting on redaction and privacy sort of issues. We obviously will be doing that at some point in the future. At this point, we're just, like I said, kind of going through the preliminary control agency process, but we have talked to a large amount of stakeholders more informally or in meetings about the type of system it should be, concerns people have, and like I said, we've coordinated with other state agencies as well. So.
Okay, any other questions for Ms. Beth?
This is Gavin Wasserman. I have a couple, if I may.
Yes.
Ms. Beth, I don't know if you can answer a technical question, so feel free to pass if that's an issue for you at this point. But this notes that the 3 large state departments that started electronic filing, CalPERS, EDD, and CIF. So when they do the electronic filing, do they then have to generate paper to send to us, or is it their electronic filing at their agency level, then department level, then come to us electronically?
For most of the agencies, they'll have a large number of filers that are only filing with that agency. So, for example, right, so they would just retain their own. So let's say they have 1,000 filers. Those filers are filing with SCIF or whoever. So they are just maintaining, their filers are filing there. For maybe there might be a handful of people that would come here, and I believe the way we're doing it is that they do generate either paper or a PDF email that comes to us so that we can receive those statements that would be filed with us.
I hear that's accurate.
So that'll be an architecture issue down the road. Okay, 2 other things real quick. The feasibility study that's going to be submitted July 21st, does that mean that we'll see it at the July meeting?
It doesn't require commission approval. Obviously, it's a public document. We're happy to make available to all the commissioners.
So it'll just end up on the website around that time and doesn't necessarily need to be on our agenda?
Correct. It doesn't need to be on the agenda.
Yeah, okay.
But like I said, we're happy to make it available.
Okay, and the third thing I was going to make a comment on this under a technical assistance report, but it's apropos of this. I did speak to the head of political forum at the Secretary of State's office about the Cal Access, and I'm glad that everyone is communicating about sort of the challenges of having responsibilities divided among sister agencies. I also had the opportunity during my personal vacation, and I want to emphasize this, no state funds were involved in this. I traveled to Alaska on vacation, and the last day I was there, early in the morning, there happened to be a meeting of the Alaska Political Offices Commission, which is essentially a counterpart agency to what we do, except for they don't have the Division of Labor with the Secretary of State. So they have recently implemented electronic filing of all documents, including candidate documents, group filers and registrations, financial disclosures, lobbyists, and employers. And while there are certainly great differences between Alaska and California, their executive director indicated he'd be very happy to communicate some of the challenges and successes they have had attempting to implement something at a state level that also includes not all municipalities, because they have a threshold amount over 15,000 population, but I will forward that information to Ms. Pat, and it can be used as appropriate. But again, no California state funds involved in this. It just happened to be I had an hour.
Well, I'd like just to clarify, so on your vacation, you went to a state agency in Alaska. Is that correct?
The last day, while my family was sleeping, with the permission of my wife, that was the requirement that I rent a car to go there so that I can then take them to an animal conservation site south of Mexico. So, yes, I did. And again, no state funds involved. But it was a very interesting...
I think we've established that for the record.
I know. I'm excessive on that. But it was very interesting to sit there and listen to how they dealt with their fines, etc. Some of their fines are based on how many days had passed. So a failure to file on a $250 disclosure could end up technically with $75,000 in fines, but they would make a finding that was grossly disproportionate to the harm to the public and impose a much lesser fine. The other interesting thing about their electronic system is because most Alaskans have a My Alaska account because they get a permanent fund dividend from the state for living in Alaska, which is interesting. So they simply use that account number for all their electronic filing with their political reform types of filing. That's really interesting. I don't know what sort of accounts that are out there, but the only thought is architecture-wise, if there's a way to make the same login at the Secretary of State and with us, that would at least be one less login in this world of having 10 million logins and passwords. anyway, it was very interesting. I actually encourage folks at some point to do a call-in to other commissions in other states and just see how they work. Their meetings are also much longer, and not because I was there, but I look at their agendas and I said, oh my dear, I can't wait for the public comment to say hello, because public comment started at noon for an 8:30 meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do any of the other commissioners have any questions on the Form 700? Okay. Thank you. Then we'll move on to the executive staff reports, which are item 44. They're all in the binders and have been made public. I believe you're going to just give us a quick update, Erin, on SB 27.
Mm-hmm. On the staff reports, unless any of the commissioners have specific questions, the staff's ready to submit them. But on the legislative report, I just wanted to highlight that the governor signed Senate Bill 27 recently, which a bill the commission sponsored last year and has worked very diligently to get passed for the past year and a half. And we are in the process of implementing regulations for that legislation. It has an effective date of July 1. It had an urgency clause in it. So we are working as quickly as possible to get those regulations on the books so that, well, obviously when the law kicks in, we'll have that guidance, and also for the November election. We had an interested persons meeting on the proposed regulations on Tuesday of this week when we received quite a lot of helpful comments, and staff is currently integrating those comments into the draft regulations. So the commission will see those regulations at the July meeting, along with a fact sheet that will help explain the new law. And in terms of the rest of the legislative package, there's still several bills that would affect the Act. Staff has worked, again, diligently to work with all the authors' offices and provide technical assistance and advice on all the legislation, and we're tracking it all, and we'll continue to do so as the session progresses.
Yes, Commissioner Wynn?
So I said this last year about this time. So it's June, and deadlines have passed in the legislature on so many of these bills, and some of them are so significant, and we haven't taken positions on most of them. I mean, we have very, very few positions. So I guess this question is to Suki, but maybe, Erin, you just want to answer it. So is the legislature unhappy with the FPPC that we don't take positions on things? I mean, I know we offer helpful technical advice, but on some of the bills that really do go to, the furtherance of the Act, and we have not taken positions. I'm just wondering, kind of what the general sentiment is at the legislature.
I think that especially this year, there's so many bills for obvious reasons that are affecting the Act that have been proposed. I don't think that the legislature is unhappy with us. I mean, we have been very consistently participating with essentially all the authors' offices and committee staff and committee chairs on really guiding the legislation in ways that we think make sense in when we look at the Act as a whole, and making sure that it complies with the rest of the pieces of the Act. And we continue to be available at all times for them. And I think especially the past several years, the Commission's had some very extensive legislation that's passed, and I think we are as staff trying to implement that as well, and kind of, like I said, continuing to monitor kind of what's going on in the Capitol.
Between AB 800 and SB 27, and our focus being on those, and now implementation, and I think that's the clear message that those were big items with a lot of work behind them.
And although there are, like I said, several bills this year that affect the Act, some of them are sort of more minor technical changes to. So and like I said, we'll continue to. They're out of session in July, but we'll provide an update as we keep going.
Suki, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to add that. Sorry, I just want to add that, yeah, we have been working with almost all of the authors for all of the PRA bills, providing as much help as we possibly can, and they're not upset that we aren't taking positions right now. So.
No one's mad.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions from the commissioners on the reports that will be submitted?
Madam Chair, I know, it's Gavin Wasserman again. I have a little bit.
Yes, Commissioner?
Okay, with respect to enforcement, just a request that perhaps we get an update in the future regarding, I believe it was the City of Sausalito council member who had failed to file, I think it was 6 or 7.
Is that an item on the consent? Is that?
No, it was an item that we decided a while back, and we imposed a maximum fine. And I was going to ask for an update later if it needs to be agendized, or it can just be added into a report on whether or not that person has eventually ever filed, or if a civil proceeding has or is necessary to be filed.
Mr. Winnick, do you know what we're referring to?
I will definitely get back to you on it.
Yeah, no, I understand. That's why I'm saying for the future. And just a comment, you know, we had we're coming up with November. There's going to be quite a few targeted legislative races, and I know at the last hearing there was some discussion with respect to a particular matter about targeting and where that falls into money laundering. So it will be interesting to see how that shakes out. And that's with respect to enforcement. With respect to technical, I just wanted to mention 2 things quickly, and one was that I did attend as commission business a reception for Asian American appointees of Governor Brown. I think between myself and the member of the Commission on Judicial Performance and the warden who were in attendance, we were probably the buzzkill trio. But I did have the opportunity to talk to a number of folks about filing. I know that's exciting talk, but also about internship possibilities, because obviously our interns do a great job here and are very helpful to furthering the Commission's mission. And it was a very useful trip, and I appreciate that I was able to attend as in the role of a commissioner. The other thing I just wanted to note was that in the city of Torrance, our longtime city clerk, Sue Herbers, is retiring. And in the outreach that I've done to many cities in LA County, consistently I've heard back from them that she's served as a mentor to them and helped them understand what they need to do, and also just the basics of that the FPPC is there to work with the filing officers. So I just want to make a comment about my appreciation for her service of many years. Thank you, and that's all.
Commissioner Rossman, it's Gary Winnick again. I did get an update from the peanut gallery in the back of the room who handled the Leon matter that the filing was in fact completed. So I don't know if you want further information, but the filing did in fact happen after the default, I'm told.
Thank you, Mr. Winnick. I need no further updates then. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions from the commissioners, I would move to adjourn.
Well, second.
Second.
Jacob?
Commissioner Kasher?
Yes.
Commissioner Eskovitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Wasserman?
Yes.
Commissioner Wynn?
Yes.
Chair Remke?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye.
The letter? Well, in the budget, yeah. Oh, the budget. Didn't get in the budget. It's a little late. It's on their radar. It's good. Part of it is they're waiting.
Okay, perfect. Does he want to do it outside or here? I mean, it might be kind of cool to just have this behind him since we're in here. Okay.